Hello everyone, this is Damon with Pixnub Software, and for this video I'm going to be discussing a very common issue with green screen when you're doing full body shots, and that is getting green spill on the front of the person from the green floor. Now there's two things here. First, this is very easy to prevent. And the second thing I'll be discussing is how to correct for it when you did not prevent it in your photo shoot. Now, to prevent this from happening, you simply don't use a floor that extends more than a couple inches in front of their feet. If you're using 3 or 4 feet of green in front of them, you're going to bounce a lot of green light up onto the person. If you only have a couple inches of green in front of them, you're not going to bounce any light onto the front of the person. So it's a very simple fix, and that'll save you so much time in post-processing if you just do that one simple thing in your photo shoot. Now, what's happening in this image here is these shorts are casting a shadow from the main light. So these areas of the knee are not getting any light from the main light. The only light they're getting is fill light from light that's being reflected up off the floor. If I sample an area in the knee here, you see the saturation here is 88%. And so that's a pretty saturated green. Now, I could have tried to make easy green screen algorithms to not remove areas of this shade or darkness, but the problem is there's areas on the screen that are almost the same color, especially when you're doing full body. You get these shadows, and you want easy green screen to be able to remove these areas of the screen, but where you have areas here that are the same color as areas of this heavy spill, they're the same color, so the software's either going to remove all of it or none of it. So you either are going to have areas of the screen not removed, or you're going to have areas of the knees that are removed. So that's why Easy Green Screen does target this, because it's very aggressive to get rid of these screen wrinkles and shadows. I will show you how to correct for this. It's actually pretty easy, as well as you've got some green logos and laces in these shoes here that we want to keep green. So I'll show you how to do both of these things. Now, I'm going to run Easy Green Screen here. I'm going to run it in single mask mode, but if you have somebody that has flyaway hair, you'll want to use dual mask for this technique most of the time, and I'll explain why when we get in here. But for this, I'm just going to run single mask. And so you can see that the areas of the knees as well as the logos on the shoes were removed, which was expected. I'm just going to zoom in here just so we can see it better when I'm making these adjustments. As well as there's some little spots on the shorts that got removed, because these shorts actually have a lot of green in them, although it's hard to see, well, especially with the spill correction, but when it's up against the green screen you don't really see that. But we'll look at that in a moment and you'll see what I'm talking about. So under the key and mask settings, there's a slider called foreground recovery, and about 70 on this image removes that pretty well. So you see that it, or doesn't remove it, it recovers the foreground as well as the specs in the shorts. Over there, actually, that's a white logo on the short. That's not transparency. And then you see it recovered the laces too, but they're not green. They have spill correction applied to them, which I'll show you how to fix that in a minute. So let's go into the spill correction here, and you can adjust the spill correction if you want more or less. Now, it used 59 by default, which it calculated to be the right amount, and maybe could use a little bit more. Kind of splitting hairs here, but somewhere in 70 actually looks pretty good. Now you could also use this spill color range warms slider. Now this doesn't set the amount of spill correction. This sets the range of colors that the spill correction is applied to. So if I turn this down to 0, you see we don't see much spill correction. And as I turn it up, you see it covers a broader area of the skin because it's targeting a larger range of colors. Now if you go too high on this slider, you can start affecting areas you don't want to and shifting colors, especially in blonde hair. So let's see what we got in the hair here. I usually don't use that at 100. I'm just doing this to demonstrate here. So that spill correction affected the whole area of the hair. The default is set to 75 because that's a pretty safe level to not have any color shifting in hair but still correct for the spill. So usually I leave that alone, but every now and then I'll bump it up just a little bit. So anyway, that's all there is to recovering this area, which actually looks pretty good, I think. And now the shoes, you've got this foreground recovery did recover those areas, but like I say, they have spill correction. So what you do in that case is in the keep or remove areas, you can just lasso these areas, and you can go over the edges as well, but just don't go over the edges that need spill correction like I think these socks probably do. Alright, so I don't know, somewhere in there, and then I'll hit the button that says remove spill correction. Oh, you know what I did? I didn't use my shift key and I removed that selection. No big deal, just select it again. Okay, remove spill correction. So now you see we've got the green laces and Nike logos back, and we still have spill correction where we need it. So last thing I'm going to do, let's turn the spill correction back off because it'll really show this here. Remember when I said that there was some spill in those black shorts? Now once you put a black background on it, you can see the areas of those shorts that are glowing with a dark green. And that again is coming from that floor. Now you don't see this when it's against a green background because like let's say if you're on a green screen background, you're not going to see that spill there because your eyes are just overwhelmed by the green around it. But you can see that there actually is spill there. So in any case, just something I wanted to point out there. Let's turn the spill correction back up to where we had it. Oh, one other thing I like to do with this technique is if I'm using a pretty high foreground recovery, like let's say more than 30 or 40, I like to turn this contract mask on to at least 1 pixel and also soften the edge a bit, especially when I'm in single mask, because that'll soften all the edges, because this foreground recovery can leave the edges pretty hard. Now in dual mask, if somebody's got a lot of flyaway hairs, this foreground recovery is going to make those hairs look real choppy. But if you're running dual mask, or excuse me, if they have a lot of flyaway hairs and you're in single mask, this will make it look real choppy. Now if you run dual mask, this foreground recovery will not apply to that area that you lasso when you're running dual mask. It'll only apply itself to everywhere else in the image. That is why I mentioned if you have somebody with a lot of flyaway hair, do the dual mask when you use this technique. So next, once you have the settings where you want, go ahead and save a preset. So I'll just call this, I'll just call it foreground recovery. You can call it whatever you want for your preset. And so when you get this choice to use auto spill correction opacity or turn auto spill correction opacity off, now I changed the spill correction opacity in this. So if we turn that off, it'll use that value of 70 that I applied for every image that runs this preset. If you have it in auto, it's going to auto calculate that spill correction opacity based on each image. Now the rule of thumb is if you're doing this all for one photo shoot, you can turn this off, no problem, and it will always use that exact value that you give it. If you're planning to use this preset for a wide range of green screen images that don't have the same lighting, leave it in auto. That way it can auto compensate for the different green screen lighting and situations. So once we have the preset saved, I'm just going to exit. I'm not going to apply this because I want to show you how you can do these in batch. So if you have a whole bunch of these, you can do these pretty quickly. So I'm going to run the Easy Green Screen 6 batch processor here. Now there's two ways you can do this. If like the area in the shoes that have green, you can do those. I'm just going to do the extractions and green recovery. I'll explain both ways here. So first, let me see the, let me get the folder I want. Okay, so there's two ways that you could recover those shoes. If you know that the foreground recovery will work and you just need to remove the spill correction, you can click this Open Easy Green Screen for each image, and you could do the lasso like we did in the keep and remove areas and do it that way, because this will open the user interface for Easy Green Screen. The other way, which is the way I'm going to show you, is with the new green recovery system, which can recover quite a bit more than you can inside of Easy Green Screen. And I'm going to show you that method. So I'm going to run single mask. I'm going to use that preset that we defined based on the settings that we used. So this way we're batch processing, and it's automatically applying that foreground recovery as well as the spill correction we gave it and any other settings you'll want to use. And so I'm just going to run this batch processor here. Okay, so now it's actually removed the green screen, and since I selected green screen removal plus green recovery, it's brought up this menu. And one thing with the green recovery system is this green recovery system is meant for recovering green clothing or any areas that are supposed to be green. It's not meant for recovering stuff that needs spill correction like on the skin, because if you use this for the areas on your knees, it's going to remove that spill correction because it's trying to recover the greens back, if that makes sense. I'm going to view with transparency. You do have that option here. So I can show you that this is already extracted and we have spill correction on the knees. So that all looks good. Everything looks good here except for these cleats. The foreground recovery actually did recover those. It's just not the spill correction. But in any case, once you get to this point, it says to select an area of your screen. So you're doing this, that way it can know what area of green or what colors of green on your screen, and it can help separate other colors of green. So now it brings up the lasso to make a loose selection around the green area that needs recovered. In this case, it's just these logos and laces, and as soon as we hit continue processing, oh, you know what? It recovered some of the screen because of the settings I had. I was doing some experiments with other images, and I had this use previous settings at start. As soon as I hit the default settings, this works very well with the default settings. So if you're doing a batch, it's a good thing to point out, since I had this, I would have forgot to point it out. Get the settings you want, and then use this checkbox that's called Use Previous Settings at Start. That way the next image that runs, well, it's on the default settings now, which worked, but if we had to tweak anything, let's say we had to adjust the hue threshold a little bit, any changes you make, it will use those on the next image, which makes it really quick, because then once you apply, I've only got one image in this batch, but once you hit apply, it would bring the next image up, and the green recovery would use those same settings. So really, it's going to be about a 20-second per image, all-inclusive process, start to finish when you're batching. It's going to extract the green. You'll do the quick green recovery. It took me 149 seconds because I talked for 2.5 minutes, but it's really actually pretty quick when you're batch processing that way. Anyway, thanks for watching, and if you're interested at all in Easy Green Screen and the green recovery system, please be sure to visit our website, that is pixnub.com.